Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Just checking with a few board members. Oh, I see. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. And I know Miss Bejo is out of the country, so she won't be joining today.
How about Dr. Schmerling and
I have not
Board
heard.
Member Brody?
Checking on them. They haven't texted back yet. So
All right. Well,
we could get
in the
this done.
instance of time, I know we're all very busy. So I think we should probably get started. Looks like it's a little bit almost 5 after. All right, so Good morning. As Chairman of the Hartford Board of Education, I hereby call to order August 3rd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. Today we'll be discussing, or the superintendent will be sharing with us information as it relates to the culture and climate survey results and also key takeaways. Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you and your team to walk us through the presentation and discussion.
Yes, a quick check-in on agenda and flow of agenda. We certainly can start with the data overview and then go to the post-secondary investment pathway update as a quick update. I'll defer to you, Chairman, to see if you want to, if we can dive into the data and then go to the post-secondary investment pathway. That works. It works.
Actually,
on our end.
let's follow the agenda. We could do the post-secondary investment updates.
Understood. Thank you. And the quick update there is since last time after the vote, there were follow-up conversations with regard to whether or not the board could transfer funds to the foundation. And so we have been looking into that. And a meeting was held with the mayor as he also wanted to learn a little more about the investment. Specifically, the question was with regard to surplus funding and surplus funding going back to the city's general fund. Chairman, I don't know if you've gotten any update on that end with regards to you have not. I see you shaking your head. So while we wait on that, I did have a conversation with the mayor just so he can have a better understanding of the post-secondary investment pathway. And he shared some feedback with us that I wanted to share with you as a board, and then ultimately perhaps after a little more conversation, look to you for next steps. So some of the feedback with regard to the design is whether or not our families long-term, would see this as something that's meaningful. And that was twofold. One was the amount that it felt like it's a small amount every year. And then with regard to, our families, some of our families might not appreciate that this is a long-term investment. And then, Mayor shared other ideas. Could we, for example, use the funds to incentivize students to come to school differently? So, we left it where we would, the mayor would want to have a follow-up conversation with some board members. So I just wanted to kind of update you on that. And then to also, from a finance perspective, I guess, Chief Penn, I'm not sure I fully understand the now what with regard to funds that are, what funds were allocated, but the funds are still with us. So they automatically return, and the timing, that's important, I think, for the board to understand. And we don't have to get into that now. Hang on, Chief Penn. Chairman Rager, we can get into that now just for the board to have an understanding of it, or we could table. I just want to make sure that we stay on track.
No, I think it's worth discussing.
Understood.
So timing is critical. One of the reasons that we pushed hard to obligate that $4 million per planned investment into early promise prior to June 30th was to make sure that we had committed those funds and that there was board action that supported doing that. Once you get past June 30th, realistically, any remaining surplus belongs to the city at that point. And you really can't retroactively make financial decisions that affect the prior year. I mean, you can do things like continue to pay bills and obligations that you had made prior to June 30th, but you cannot retroactively now go say, well, you know what, since we can't if we're not going to do early promise, I want to spend that $4 million in a different way. That you can't do. So at this point, if there's a decision made not to fund early promise, that money would wind up going back into the city's general fund. And then it becomes incumbent on them to figure out where that would go. Now, there's been conversations around trying to ensure that we have $8 million go back into CIP to continue to fund the school construction projects. Presumably, and the mayor actually covered with Marb at their most recent meeting what the priorities were for any kind of city surplus. At some point, theoretically, that goes into the unrestricted fund balance, which improves the overall financial condition of the city and potentially has the possibility of elevating their debt out of the status it is into a higher bond grade. But you do sort of lose the ability to obligate the funds once we're past the June 30 timeframe.
So Chief Penn, just so I'm clear, as of right now, there's only two actions, right? Is one, continue down the path in which the board voted to allocate the funds towards our Launchpad initiative, or two, that those funds go back to the city.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues?
I don't have any at this point.
Same. No questions at this point. Thank you.
I don't have any questions either.
All right, Tyron Walker, no questions.
All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to our presentation, and I'm tagging in several of us. Dr. Silver, Chief Avila, and as we go through, just for protocol, planning to get through the presentation and then do questions. But if Chairman and the board defer to you, if you want to kind of pause in between as well. I know we sent a lot of information, and we have even more information that, well, we're not going to present it today. We can always send it to you. As you know, that this is an extensive survey. So if you give me a minute, we're going to review the survey results, and then currently where we are with regard to our thinking and planning with regard to next steps in response to the trends. Just trying to tee up here, and my computer is spinning, so give me 1 minute. Okay, team, I'm not able to open my PowerPoint, but I'm just going to go off what we have on the screen here. So we, as you know, we are committed to developing and sustaining a culture that is conducive not only to our students' academic, but social, emotional well-being and progress. And so what we're going to show here are results as we progress throughout the year with regard to culture and climate. We are continuing to reflect on the outcomes and how we at the district level, at the departmental level, and at the school level can improve based on the results. So this is district level data. All of our schools also have their results and are engaging in their school improvement planning process that is going to be in response to these data as well. Just for some background, and Dr. Silver, you can also add additional information here, but just for background, back in 2010, the Culture and Climate Survey began, and this is a requirement that districts, public school districts have, and Hartford wanted to continue to see how we could get better at connecting with students, families, and staff. And this is a way to do that. The law does require that a survey is administered every 2 years. And, as a district, we have grown to not only value the data, but also now conduct this comprehensive survey several times a year. We have designed our survey to gather information about safety, well-being of students, and specifically, there's been intentionality to align survey items to all of our 4 areas in our strategic plan. And if you can recall, this survey was actually very essential in informing our 2021 through 2024 strategic plan. This spring, we administered our end of year survey and gave you, the items and their favorability ratings from each of our respondent groups. That's how the data is going to be presented today. In addition, we have identified areas that students, staff, and our families celebrate, and then, also our areas of opportunities and enhancing work. So today, Chief Avila, you're going to lead through review of some celebrations and opportunities, and then Chief Silver provide just an overview of the data, its integrity, right? Knowing that we want to make sure that we practice and data with authenticity and having integrity of our data and data approaches. And then we'll talk about what we're doing for next steps in response to this ongoing improvement. Okay, team.
Good morning,
Go.
everyone. As we look at the items that we have that are high favorability and low favorability ratings, we will go into more details about the results later in the presentation. But right now, I just wanted to highlight the celebrations, and that is in regard to student technology access and students having access to technology, friends and caring adults that students felt that they had at the school level, and then the teacher communication with families was another area to celebrate. Areas of opportunity were building cleanliness, students feeling connected to school in particular, and then staff professional learning opportunities. Some of our opportunity areas we will have had low favorability rates, including building cleanliness, students feeling connected to their school community, and the quality of our professional learning opportunity. These ratings vary across respondents, but we wanted to recognize the themes and also share the district-wide actions items in response to the valuable feedback.
Good morning, everyone. With any survey, the first question that comes to mind, regardless of what the data show us, is how trustworthy is this data? So the first thing that we want to know is, well, how many of our respondent groups, what's the proportion, what's our response rate for these for our various groups? So we've provided you with this summary information. We go all the way back to spring 2021 because we want to show how much we've grown. Spring 2021, we had adopted a new survey process with transitioning from a former vendor to using Qualtrics, and appreciate so much the platform has given us a lot of flexibility. So we transitioned to Qualtrics and have grown steadily in terms of participation and learning how to do this research. The standards for traditional survey research require 26% of the respondents to respond in order to have data that you can generalize to the larger population. And so we're very intentional about sampling our populations and communicating participation rates. And so these are them. And we also set targets for our different groups. So we have on the right-hand side, the student participation goal for the spring was 77%. The family participation goal for the spring was 29%, and the staff participation goal was 63% or greater. And these goals were set based on the spring and fall participation rates. And so what we did very well, and I just want to celebrate the work that was done in our schools. We met all of these participation goals, 100% of those goals, increasing the fall to spring participation by at least 10%. So we can see that we did that, and I just want to express appreciation to all the work that happened out of our Office of Schools and in our schools. So these data elements, these participation rates tell us that the data is trustworthy. And so now we are interested in moving on to the transparency of our data and sharing everything that we have with our leadership team and our community and our Board of Education. When the surveys are administered, I just want to also share that students and families need to enter the student's lunch ID in order to take the survey. And so 77.4%, that represents all the students in grades 3 through 12 who were invited to take the survey. 77.4% of them completed the survey. The parents need to enter the individual student ID in order to complete the survey. So we have responses from 34% of the parents of our children in our schools. And Chief Abdullah, I don't know if you want to speak to any additional work that happened in our schools to increase participation.
Yes, in order to increase participation, we extended the window of administration. So initially we had a certain set date, but announced and shared with families, students, and staff that we are extending the window of administration, as well as conducted phone calls at home to ask parents if they needed any additional support in completing the survey and accessing the survey as well, so that we could get as much feedback as possible. And as we continue to plan for next year, we are taking that into consideration to make sure that we are thinking of different strategies to increase participation even further for all of our stakeholders.
Okay, so I want to introduce the format of this slide because it follows the whole presentation, shares the data in this way. So this is our first priority, high quality teaching and learning, and you can see the name of that and the corresponding color on the upper right-hand side. And in the purple bar going across, it says items that earned highest favorability ratings. So these are the items that families either agreed or strongly agreed with the most frequently. I'm sorry, not families, just respondents in general. So we have students in the left column, we have family responses in the center column, and we have Hartford Public Schools staff in the right column. And each, there are the top three items that receive the highest favorability are listed in order of their high favorability. So 89%, we look at the student column, 89% of our students agree or strongly agree that to the statement, I have the technology I need to do my schoolwork. Moving over to the left, 94% of our families agree or strongly agree that my child has the technology they need to do their schoolwork. And then 99% of our staff agree or strongly agree, I care about student learning. So this is the format and the structure that we designed into this presentation. I do want to note that we presented the data the same way last spring when we shared results from the 2021 survey. That was when we had 7.7% of our families participating compared to the 34% this year. So just to kind of refresh us, last spring, caring about student learning was the top choice for each group. And this spring, technology really has taken the lead for students and families. But caring about learning remains the highest favorability for staff, but also comes up also shows up in this high favorability rating from students and families. Chief Abdullah, was there anything that you wanted to add about this slide?
No, Dr. Silver.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll move to the next one. This format shows us the lowest favorability ratings for the high quality teaching and learning survey items. So teaching and learning items with the lowest favorability ratings are still very positive for families. When we look, we see students ratings in the 70%, which is still very strong. Families, the lowest items that we had still were in the 90s, and our staff show us we have professional learning experiences at 61%, And then in the 70s for students capable of meeting grade level expectations, and I am supported in meeting the expectations of my role. So the student ratings, see. I just wanted to share that the same 3 items that appear for this spring also appeared last year for staff as having the lowest favorability. And I know that we're going to discuss professional learning in more detail later in this report. But this summarizes the items with lowest favorability for high quality teaching and learning. And we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, and again, it's the items follow the same structure in terms of the format. The ones with the leading favorability ratings relate to friends and caring adults. And I just wanted to remind you, last year, the friends and caring adult ratings were in the 80s, and now they're in the 90s from our students, our families, and our staff. So just want to share that update. Chief Avila, is there anything you want to add about the high favorability ratings for these items?
Just want to celebrate how we've increased the opportunity for students to feel that they have a caring adult that they can go to and rely on, and the fact that they came back to school and are making friends at school. Just want to remind everyone we were in COVID, and the year previous they were in and out of school doing different learning methodologies, and coming back with having students focus on connecting again was a priority in our schools.
I do want to pause for a moment to see if there's any questions from the board.
I do have one,
Ms. Brody, go ahead.
and I apologize for my background. Do we think that because you have to put in, am I correct? I think when I went in, you have to put in like your student's ID number. That was the case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we think that because you know we want families to be honest, do we think that is something that parents are saying is like I'm self-identifying? So if I'm complaining about something, I might not necessarily want them to know it's me. Did we consider the effect that would take on participation?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Rowdy. We have considered that, and we are working on strategies to mitigate that. One of our strategies is to have public-facing dashboards that show the data and help communicate to our community how the information is not accessible at a granular level. At fewer than 10 respondents, people cannot see the data. And the comments, I know Chief Avila, the comments from families and the open-ended comments, I know Chief Avila has a plan, a process that her team follows in working through those open-ended items with schools. I don't know if you want to expound on that.
So the open-ended comments are reviewed by principals as well as with the EDSLs and are shared with staff so that we can address the trends that come in open-ended comments as well. No one is identified in those open comments, but the actual data is shared so that the school staff as well as the administration is well aware of the open comments and plan how to address that in their school improvement plans.
Does that satisfy your question, Ms. Browdy?
Yes, but if something like for a parent to feel comfortable to say my principal won't know that I said, you know, X, Y, and Z, maybe until we, you know, get it to a point where we don't have to self-identify, if it could be like stated somewhere that this is just because you don't want anybody just going in and being able to complete 5 surveys. So I get the rationale behind why you have to, you don't, you just want real data. But if it could be something that says, is not going to be used at your school level, or, to just make them feel a little bit more comfortable so we can get more participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we could continue.
Thank you, Chairman Riger.
So if we look at the items that are lowest favorable in our ratings, I wanted to point out that it's 25% of our students said, I do not attend school if I don't have a uniform. Though that's a low number, it indicates that not having a uniform does not impede our students coming to school, because they come to school regardless, and that doesn't seem to have been an issue. In past years, that was a barrier, and so that even though it says low favorable, it is a positive that it's only 25% that still feel that that's a barrier, and we will continue to work so that there are no students that feel that that's a barrier. I did want to point out that 58% of our students indicated, I feel connected to my school, which is a low indicator. And one of the things that we are going to do is to further unpack that data to correlate students who are chronically absent. Were they the ones that particularly indicated whether they were missed or not, or was the results from students who are not, who are in school regularly and don't feel that they are missed, and that 59%. So I just wanted to point that out, that as we continue to look at our data, we are continuing to do a deep analysis, and I will speak later to how we are going to continue to address strengthening a sense of belonging for our students later in the presentation. And then as we look at 69% of our students where adults rated that LGBTQ plus items we have our policy committee has recently completed a second reading of our new transgender policy that will appear for a second reading and adoption at our next board meeting. This policy will support our work in schools to help transgender and LGBTQ plus students feel more comfortable and welcomed in schools. We can go to the next slide.
Engaging family and community partnerships addresses communication and collaborative engagement. That's what we see in this work. And these are the same high favorability rated items as in the spring 2021 survey. To further enhance family engagement, we have a family engagement Title I policy that also recently came to our policy meeting, policy committee for a second reading. And they have done their work on that document, and it is being brought to our full Board of Education for our August meeting. In the crafting of that, in the writing of that policy, we engaged a number of families, clarifying the Title I meeting cadences at schools. That's part of what the policy does. And we've also included partnership with families in decision-making related to the allocation of Title I funds. And in alignment with this policy and the work already planned in this area, we do have a district-wide Title I meeting with families scheduled for September 17th that Chief Blackburk has been planning and working on. So a lot of information here, positive ratings, and really focused on communication and collaborative engagement partnership. And we can move on to the next slide. And these are the items that earned the lowest favorability ratings in engaging family and community partnerships. And based on these assessments, certainly these are low numbers. 54% of students say my family enjoys school events. I know that we had some pivots that we need to make between in-person and online events. And I think we have a little bit of Zoom fatigue happening here. So we have lingering effects from the pandemic that continue to limit our families' enjoyment of school events and visits. And we do remain hopeful that conditions will improve and people will feel more comfortable coming into our schools. So, and joining us in some of those Title I meetings that are coming up this coming year in our schools. I think we can go on to the next slide. Okay, and I'll just keep sharing here. Similar to the spring 2021 results, students and families continue to rate their teachers and instruction very favorably, and staff agree. And families also feel strongly about teacher skills and classroom safety. So again, the most positive ratings come from our adults. Our students give less positive ratings. That's a trend in the data overall. But these are the highest favorability ratings for skillful staff and effective operations. And we can go to the next slide, which I think speaks to our times. Certainly, students, 50% of them, half of them really, I feel safe from the virus at school. So they're disagreeing or strongly disagreeing with that statement. Parents echo that, not to the same degree, but they do have concerns about virus safety at school. And our staff also have concerns about feeling safe from the virus at work. Building cleanliness was listed also by each of our responding groups, and school norms and practices, rules that keep students safe were mentioned as well. So that's included in these items, which have the lowest favorability ratings in skillful staff and effective operations. I think we can go to our next slide.
And our actions to address some of these low favorable results. And so in regard to cleanliness, culture and climate walkthroughs that were conducted in 2021-22 lifted the need of an increased communication and cadence of touch points between school leaders, facilities, and the district. And so based on our feedback from school leadership, cleaning schedules were adjusted, and in some cases, staffing resources were shifted from second shift to first shift, and an increased communication will allow for preventive measures to be implemented. So there will be continued increased communication between the district, school leaders, and head custodian teams. There will be an increased scheduled inspections by supervisor, and a continued effort to increase the hiring of substitute and floater custodians. And we will continue our walkthroughs as well, so that we will continue to share the vision for what's moving forward in our schools in regard to that communication and cadence and cleanliness in our buildings. In regard to student connection, as a part of our strategic plan and the evolution of that plan heading into 22-23 school year, we are focused on increasing opportunities for students to share their voice. We want to lift student voice and to support each other into peer-to-peer mentoring programs. Due to COVID, we had a minimized amount of mentoring that had to take place. And so we will revisit mentoring with adults and peer-to-peer mentoring programs, and participate in an increased cadence of celebration and events to showcase their talents and personal growth. We also will encourage our building leaders to engage students in the development of their equity innovation grants and develop a robust offering of after-school enrichment activities and high-quality athletics. And in regard to staff professional learning opportunities, return to in-person professional learning, which allows for cohorts of teachers and personalized training to address specific needs. And due to COVID, all of the professional learning opportunities were, except for one, was virtual. And so we know that engaging in person is a much more engaging and meaningful opportunity. Differentiate professional learning to address various learning styles, and that majority of the professional learning and led by teachers, so that they are taking ownership and sharing their expertise. And that is based on teacher feedback as well. And then the increased opportunity for collaboration with colleagues and a menu of opportunities for various professional learning topics and methods for professional learning.
Dr. Silver, you can kind of reference the data dashboards. I know I'm going back and forth with Ms. Escribano on the chat about the actual sample size.
Thank you so much, Dr. Torres Rodriguez and Board Member Escribano for the question about the sample size. The data links here, the links on this page, take you to the online dashboards that summarize responses for each respondent group. And these dashboards are designed to provide a summary of the survey results. And I don't know if we could maybe click on the student link and just give an example of what's available there. There we go. So when we click on this link, it will take us to the, these are the students. As you can see in the upper left corner, it does say Hartford Public Schools Culture, Climate, and Equity Survey Spring 2022, grades 3 through 12 students. So our count was 11,271 respondents, and this was 77% of our sample. This might not be, but we could add the total number surveyed in this widget, this round widget here. And the dashboards group respondents by English learner and by English learner. These are the survey questions that will appear every year in our climate and culture survey. So we do look at English learner, language, the student grade level. If we scroll down a little bit, how many of our respondents were special education? We have race, ethnicity, and Christina, if we could maybe, could you click on the F in gender just to show how this, the bar. Yeah, so if we click on that bar, what happens is the data is disaggregated. It's grouped just by that one group. And at the top of the page, one of the notifications is that the dashboard is designed to protect the identity of respondents, and groups fewer than 10 will not display. So if we had fewer than 10 students whose gender is female responding in any one area, then the data would not display there. And that is to protect responses from people. So we have 4,542 respondents who were female. Christina, if you click again on the bar that corresponds to the F, you can remove that filter so that we see, we can filter by, we scroll down a little bit further, we see resident town. The percent responding favorably, this area in the center shows us 4 bars, each one of them corresponding to each of the areas that are measured on the climate survey. So the high quality teaching and learning, welcoming culture, nurturing climate, each of the 4 areas of our strategic plan, we summarize the items this way. And as we scroll down further, we have the items grouped by where you can actually see the items themselves. And if you hover, Christina, if you hover your cursor over one of the bars, the item stem pops up. It shows you how many responses we had that agree and how many responses we had that disagree for that particular item for that group of students. So you can filter in a lot of ways by the data that's here to look more closely at items. But if your group does get smaller than 10, the item data will not display. So that is one way we're protecting the identity of the survey respondents. So these data, again, reflect all of the multiple choice items, as well as some demographic information and for the items that appear year after year in the surveys. And this is the case for students, staff, and families. Sometimes there are questions that we're working on that we might add to this survey, such as our staff's satisfaction with, I don't know, an initiative that we're doing in central office. But the standard items that appear that are agreed upon by the Climate and Culture Survey Committee are the items that appear here. So I hope that answers your question, Ms. Rowdy, about the data reflecting the entire survey. And
Dr. Silver, it's also appended, right, to the PowerPoint in a different visual, the answers to all of the questions.
that's correct. Thank you, Dr. Torres Rodriguez. And Christine, I guess we could. Thank you.
Oh. That was the end of the presentation, yes?
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members of the board? If there are any, just use the raise hand feature. Okay, I do not see any questions. Superintendent, do you would like to continue?
Yes, so that is the end of our presentation with regard to the Culture and Climate Survey. I will kind of bring us back to how I started with regard to the work that we are doing now, which is identifying how these survey trends impact the strategies that we had identified and any work that we have to do to shift, lean in even closer, or identify additional moves that we're going to make. The one that I will highlight for us mostly for now is around the professional learning, given that professional learning last year, we still were doing it for the most part via screen. And so that is a shift this year. So we're going to leverage not only the opportunity that we're in person with our adult learners, but also, to establish more collaborative structures. And one of those, that was highlighted in terms of a move that we're going to make is to allow more of our adults, like our teachers, to lead learning for their peers. And so we're excited about that. And that is the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Any additional questions from members of the board? Superintendent, I do have a question. And I appreciate all the hard work that your team has done to gather the data and facilitate these findings. Has this survey has this been shared, I guess, with the various unions and other stakeholders that impact our schools and our students' ability to learn?
It has not. After this meeting, that kind of pivots us to sharing. And we're thinking of doing it in multiple ways. One is to share, as we're sharing it with you in this format, for example, with our union stakeholders, also in our communication to families, making sure that there are links that we include and that we also highlight, right? Like we're doing with you, high favorability, those areas that we're looking to improve. And before, what did already happen at the school level is that principals did share and unpack the data with their staff. However, that means that it was school-specific findings and trends that were shared, because what we wanted was for school leaders to begin to collaboratively identify ways to improve. Given that culture and climate, right, impacts everyone in a school, we want school leaders to also plan with their staff.
Okay, thank you. Just looking at the screen here to see if there's any additional questions or comments. All right, seeing none, I think sounds like we're in good shape.
I want to thank the team for all their hard work and knowing that, you know, it was challenging last year and there were many different narratives. And while I do not, I'm not saying that we're going to ignore anyone's voice. I want to make sure that we level and have as many data points as possible to really look at how we're creating a culture that is most conducive to accelerating our student outcomes. So thank you, team, and thank you, board.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.